Attempting to resurrect another adventure icon from the 80s Dakar era, Suzuki shows off its V-STROM 1050. Inspired by the Big Thumper, the DR Big from that era, the V-STROM 1050 is however an updated model of last year's V-STROM 1000. Now, there was a time when Suzuki wasn't the boring motorcycle company we all know today. Adventure-wise speaking, of course. For a great many years, they have only been offering their line of V-STROM models as their adventure touring bikes, and as everyone will tell you, it's quite a daunting prospect finding a more boring and bland bike than the V-STROM. But it wasn't always like this. Starting with the DR 500 in the 1980s and culminating with the DR 800 Big in the 1990s, Suzuki had riders wrapped around their fingers with their amazing dual sport bikes. The DR 800 Big, also known as the Desert Express, had a production run until 1997, and from 2002 onwards, Suzuki started their line of DL 1000s, also known as the current V-STROM lineup. 2 years later, in 2004, they introduced a smaller V-STROM, the 650, and fast forward 15 years to 2019, this is still the same lineup we're getting when it comes to Suzuki adventure dual sport motorcycles. So can you imagine the sheer wave of excitement that was generated when rumors started popping up last year about Suzuki maybe resurrecting its Desert Express icon? Everybody was in sheer excitement mode, imagining what a modern version of such an icon would look like. So let's see how Suzuki managed to disappoint everyone. Mean, Dave, just mean. Why are you writing such mean things today? Did you get dumped again? Well, first of all, it's a V-STROM model and not a DR model. It's not a V-STROM 1000 anymore, its official name is now the V-STROM 1050, which would obviously suggest that the new engine is larger by about 50 cc's. But alas, no. It's the same engine from the previous V-STROM 1000, which has been retuned to comply with new emission regulations. Suzuki says that the updated engine is 6 horsepower more powerful at 106 brake horsepower, and that torque is decreased just a little bit to just under 100 Newton meters. But the problem is that torque now peaks a whopping 2000 RPM higher in the rev range at 6000 RPM, which for a dual sport adventure bike, which is supposed to see a lot of dirt riding, is really just a big no-no. The chassis has remained the same as the previous model, and the suspension setup is the same as well, with 43mm KYB forks and a matching rear monoshock. So pretty much the same engine, chassis and suspension, so the bike will feel identical to its predecessor, there's no question about that. Where Suzuki has made a lot of changes, and this feels like the major upgrade point for 2020, is electronics. Both models get a new ride-by-wire system instead of the old cable-operated one, 3 riding modes and a new LCD instrument panel. And careful here, this is not a full color TFT panel which can display all the beautiful colors under the sun. It's an LCD type screen which only displays a couple of colors. The more higher spec model, the XT, also gets spoked tubeless wheels, one of those fancy schmancy 6-axis inertial measurement units which allows the bike to know exactly what it's doing in 3D space, with the end result being cornering ABS and a much better traction control system. You also get cruise control, a hill hold system with a combined braking system which is supposed to make braking a lot safer depending on a variety of conditions. The XT model gets even more love with handguards, engine bars, a center stand, a bash plate, as well as a 12-volt power socket, while both versions get a USB port as standard. Let's talk a little about the windshield situation here. When you're traveling on tarred and non-tarred roads, a lot of riders prefer to adjust their windshield lower on off-road to see exactly what's in front of the front wheel. This makes an easily adjustable windshield a must for a dual sports bike. Now, the new V-STROM 1050 does technically come with adjustable windshields, But for the base version, you will need tools to adjust it, so most people will never even bother. And for the XT version, the adjusting mechanism for some reason is on the outside of the windshield, so you will need to get off your bike for making an adjustment. That's all I have to say on this subject. So basically, the only thing in common that the V-STROM 1050 has with the much loved DR series of bikes is the color scheme. It can, however, still surprise all of us, and we'll see exactly what it's made of when we get to test ride one, so make sure you subscribe to catch that. Also, let us know in the comments what your impression of the 1050 is. Maybe you loved the way the older V-STROM 1000 handled and are over the moon with the lack of changes of the 1050. Let us know. Even if it's not a brand new machine, the new V-STROM 1050 is clearly an improvement on the V-STROM 1000, both technically and aesthetically. Well, that's the show, everyone. If you've enjoyed it, give it a big thumbs up, and if you think you've learned something new, consider subscribing or becoming a patron to help us make more of these shows. Cheers, and I'll see you on the next one.